Unearthing the first door. The sun rose over Jerusalem with a soft golden light that touched the stones of the ancient city. Every morning, the city awoke with a familiar rhythm, but this day felt different to Dr. Layla Mansour. She stood near the edge of the Mount of Olives, gazing across the valley toward the old city. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of olive trees and dust. Layla was an archaeologist, known for her meticulous work and calm determination. She had come to Jerusalem for what was supposed to be a simple excavation near an old Ottoman cistern. Nothing about it seemed extraordinary, at least not yet. Her phone vibrated with a message from Amir Hafiz, the local project supervisor. He had written, "The team is ready. You need to see this." Layla adjusted the strap of her satchel, filled with brushes, field notebooks, and a small leather-bound journal that once belonged to her late father, who had also been an archaeologist. Inside it was a phrase written in Arabic that she had memorized since childhood: "Seek truth, even when it hides beneath the dust of centuries." When she arrived at the dig site, the hum of machinery mixed with the scrape of shovels. The trench had been opened only a few meters deep, and workers were already brushing away layers of compact soil. Amir, a man in his 30s with sharp eyes and an easy smile, waved her over. "Layla, you're not going to believe this," he said, his voice low with excitement. She stepped down into the trench, the scent of earth rising around her. "What did you find?" "One of the diggers hit something solid," Amir said. "It's not stone from the walls. It feels carved, old, very old." Layla knelt beside the exposed area. Her gloved hands brushed away the dirt. Beneath the layers of soil, she saw a smooth surface, pale limestone perfectly cut. She took out her small brush and gently cleared more of it. Within minutes, the shape became clear. It was a slab, circular at the center but framed with rectangular edges. Around it were faint carvings, symbols that were not immediately familiar. "This isn't Ottoman," she murmured. "It's much older." Amir nodded. "That's what I thought. Look at the mortar. It's mixed with ash and clay, not lime. Maybe Byzantine or earlier?" Layla's heartbeat quickened. She motioned for one of the workers to bring down a portable light. The beam illuminated the slab, and a faint pattern shimmered along its edge. Small lines arranged almost like writing, though worn by time. She leaned closer. The markings seemed deliberate, as if someone had intended to seal something away. Before she could examine further, another voice called out from above. Dr. David Rosen was climbing down the ladder, his notebook in hand. A historian and epigrapher from Tel Aviv University, he had joined the team only a week ago. "Amir told me you found something strange," he said, as he crouched beside her. His voice carried a calm curiosity. Layla gestured to the slab. "It's sealed. Look at the symmetry. Whoever placed it here wanted it hidden." David brushed away another patch of dirt, then ran his fingers along the edge. "These grooves," he said, "aren't decorative. They look like locking points. This might be a cover, maybe a tomb or a chamber." Layla looked up at Amir. "We'll need to lift it carefully." They called for equipment. A few of the workers attached cables and levers, while Layla took photographs from every angle. Hours passed under the hot midday sun. By the time the slab began to shift, the air was heavy with tension. As it lifted, a breath of cool air rose from below, a smell like ancient dust and cedar wood. Layla knelt and peered into the darkness beneath. A narrow shaft descended several meters, leading into what appeared to be a chamber. The beam from her flashlight caught faint glimmers on the walls. "It's hollow," Amir whispered. "Get the cameras," Layla said. A small inspection camera was lowered into the shaft. The live feed appeared on a monitor beside them. The first images were blurry, but as the camera stabilized, the chamber came into focus. It was perfectly circular, the walls carved smooth, with strange geometric designs running along them. At the center stood a stone pedestal, and on it lay a rectangular object wrapped in faded cloth. "What is that?" Amir said, leaning closer to the screen. Layla stared at the image, her pulse rising. "It looks metallic," she said softly. "And it's untouched." David crossed his arms. "If this chamber predates the Ottoman era, we could be looking at something from the early Second Temple period, or older." Layla knew better than to make assumptions, but even she could feel the weight of what they had uncovered. Jerusalem was a city layered in millennia of faith and conflict. Every inch of its soil hid stories. But this felt different. This felt deliberate. By evening, the trench was surrounded by security tape. Officials from the Antiquities Authority arrived, along with a government representative who insisted the site be sealed until experts could assess it. Layla protested. If we leave it open overnight, moisture and air exposure could damage everything. We need to record and stabilize it now. The official hesitated, then nodded. 1 hour, nothing removed, only documentation. Layla descended again into the trench. The air inside was cool and still. She could hear the faint echoes of voices above her. She placed her hand gently on the edge of the opening, feeling the texture of the stone. For a moment, she imagined the people who had sealed it centuries ago, who they were, what they feared, and why they hid it so carefully. The camera crew lowered stronger lights, revealing more detail of the walls. The carvings were not random. They formed patterns, almost like constellations, though none matched known maps of the night sky. David murmured something about ancient calendars and celestial alignments, but Layla barely heard him. Her eyes were fixed on the object on the pedestal. I want to document its position before we touch anything, she said. She moved closer, kneeling beside the edge. Zoom in on the wrapping. The cloth was woven from fine threads, nearly translucent at the edges. Beneath it, the metal surface gleamed with a faint golden hue. Not dull like bronze, but not bright like gold either. It seemed to reflect the light differently, like it held a glow of its own. Amir exhaled slowly. It looks alive, David frowned. You mean reflective? No, Amir said. Alive. Layla said nothing. She only watched, her eyes tracing the lines of the chamber. Something about its symmetry unsettled her. It was too perfect, too intentional, as if every stone had been placed with knowledge of geometry beyond its time. When the first LiDAR scan appeared on the monitor, the outlines of the chamber became clearer. There were hidden cavities behind the walls, small tunnels leading outward, some blocked with debris, others forming patterns like branches. Inside the object, faint shadows hinted at mechanical components, levers, gears, and hollow compartments. David leaned closer. That's impossible, he whispered. This is precision engineering. It looks almost modern. Layla felt the same chill. Or, she said, someone in the past knew more than we think. The deputy minister approached from behind them, his face pale. We'll need to shut this down tonight. There's too much attention. Reporters are already calling it the discovery of the century. Layla turned to him. If we leave it unprotected, we risk losing everything. We can seal the chamber temporarily, but let us finish the scan. He hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. 10 more minutes. As the scanner completed its sweep, Layla scribbled quick notes in her father's journal. A sealed chamber beneath the city. Unknown script. Mechanism within metallic object. Possible link to early Jerusalem. She underlined the last phrase twice. When the final image processed, the computer displayed a clear view of the top of the metallic object. Along its surface, etched with the precision of a craftsman's hand, were words. Not Hebrew, not Greek, not Latin, something older. David tilted his head, squinting at the image. These letters, they're a hybrid. The structure is like Phoenician, but the arrangement almost like coordinates. Coordinates? Layla repeated. Yes, he said. As if the letters point to alignment, something astronomical, maybe even geographic. Layla stared at the screen, feeling the hair on her neck rise. Then this isn't just a container, she said quietly. It's a key. That night, after the officials sealed the site with temporary barriers, Layla remained behind, sitting near the trench with her notebook open on her knees. The city's lights glimmered across the hills, the air filled with the distant sounds of prayer and traffic. She could not shake the feeling that the chamber had been waiting to be found, not by chance, but by timing. Her father once told her that some truths were buried not to be forgotten, but to wait for the right generation to understand them. Looking into the dark opening of the trench, she felt that truth pressing close around her. Something was hidden beneath Jerusalem, something that might not only change history, but challenge everything humanity believed it knew. And as she closed her notebook, a cold wind rose from the direction of the old city, carrying with it the whisper of words she could not yet understand. The first door had been opened. The past was awake again. The next morning, Jerusalem woke under a blanket of grey clouds. The call to prayer echoed from minarets as church bells rang softly through the narrow streets. The city seemed to breathe in unison with its history. Dr. Layla Mansour arrived at the excavation site before dawn. The air smelled of damp earth and ancient dust. Security guards stood near the barriers, and a few journalists were already gathered beyond the yellow tape, their cameras waiting for any sign of movement. Amir was already at the trench, sipping coffee from a paper cup. "They didn't sleep either," he said, nodding toward the reporters. Layla set down her bag. "They won't get anything from us. We are not ready to speak yet." Amir smiled faintly. "The city never waits for permission. Rumors travel faster than truth here." Layla crouched near the edge of the trench. The cover slab was now surrounded by protective panels, and the temporary shelter above it had been reinforced overnight. David Rosen arrived moments later with a thick folder in his hands. His eyes were tired but alive with curiosity. "I spent all night comparing the markings," he said. "They're not random. Each cluster of symbols matches a set of ancient constellations, recorded in early Samaritan astronomy. But there's something else. The placement of the letters forms a pattern that could represent alignment between Jerusalem and another location." "Another location where?" Layla asked. David hesitated. "Possibly Egypt, or farther east. The coordinates are not exact, but the arrangement suggests correspondence between two sites. A network." Layla looked down into the trench. "A network beneath Jerusalem," she murmured. "What would they have needed it for?" Before David could answer, a car pulled up. Out stepped a tall man in a dark suit with a badge clipped to his pocket. He introduced himself as Colonel Ben Harari, a liaison from the Ministry of Heritage and Security. His tone was polite but firm. "I understand you have uncovered something of potential historical importance," he said. "My office has been assigned to ensure this site remains protected. Any findings will be shared directly with the government first." Layla exchanged a look with Amir. "We have strict archaeological procedures," she said. "All documentation will be shared through the proper channels." The colonel nodded, but his expression revealed that his concern was not preservation, but control. "I hope we understand each other," he said before walking away toward the security tent. Once he was gone, Amir muttered under his breath, "They smell power buried in the dirt." Layla ignored the comment and focused on the chamber below. She lowered herself carefully into the trench again. The air inside felt cooler than the day before. She switched on her flashlight and examined the inner walls more closely. The carvings were deeper than she had thought. Between the lines of symbols were small depressions, as if designed to hold something. She placed her fingers over one of the carvings. The stone was smooth yet faintly warm. She called to David. "There are small sockets here, like they once held metal pins or stones." David joined her. "Maybe a locking system or part of the mechanism's protection. Ancient engineers often used physical puzzles to guard sacred relics." Layla tilted her head, thinking. "Then whoever sealed this chamber wanted only those with knowledge to access it." Amir called down from above. "The technicians are ready for a closer scan. If you want it, do it," Layla said. They lowered the scanner again and adjusted the angles. The machine hummed softly as it recorded every detail. On the monitor, the chamber appeared in layers of light blue and grey. This time, the image captured something new. Behind the pedestal, embedded into the wall, was a circular plate made of a different material than the rest of the chamber. Layla frowned. "Zoom in there." The plate reflected faintly, as though it had once been polished metal. Around its edge was an inscription that had been hidden from direct view, David whispered. That could be the key to understanding the whole design. They decided to enter the chamber physically for the first time. With care, Layla descended through the narrow shaft. Amir followed with a safety rope. The light from their headlamps cast long shadows on the carved walls. The silence below was thick and deep, broken only by the faint sound of their breathing. Layla approached the pedestal. The cloth covering the metallic object looked as delicate as spider silk. For a moment she hesitated, her heart beating faster. Then, with gloves on, she lifted a corner of the fabric. Beneath it, the object gleamed, covered with intricate etchings. Tiny gears and fine engravings marked its surface. It was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, far beyond what should have existed in its time. Amir whispered, "It looks like a mechanism." "But what does it do?" Layla's voice was quiet. "That's what we must find out." David's voice came from the speaker above. "Be careful. I'm recording everything. Try to get a close view of the symbols near the base." Layla leaned closer and used a soft brush to clear the dust. The symbols repeated in a circular pattern, and between them were lines shaped like rays extending outward. As she brushed away more dirt, she uncovered a small indentation at the center of the object, a hole perfectly shaped for something to fit into it. "It's missing a piece," she said. "Something was meant to go here," David replied. "That could explain why it was sealed. Maybe they hid the missing part elsewhere." Layla stood and turned her light toward the circular plate on the wall. It too had a central depression of the same size and shape. Her pulse quickened. "Amir, shine the light here." Amir did as she asked. The plate was engraved with a spiral pattern that seemed to echo the designs on the object. She brushed gently across the surface. A fine dust fell away, revealing more text. She could make out only fragments, but one line stood clear. "When stone and metal meet, the truth shall rise." Layla felt a chill run down her spine. "It's an instruction," she said softly. "But for what?" Amir took a deep breath. "Do you think we should try connecting them?" Layla shook her head. "Not yet. We document first. We don't know what reaction it could cause. It might be symbolic or it might be mechanical." They took dozens of photographs and samples of the air and dust within the chamber. The deeper they looked, the more they realized how complex the construction was. The walls were not ordinary stone. Analysis later revealed traces of magnetic minerals, arranged in a way that suggested deliberate placement. When they finally climbed back out, the sky above the city had darkened. Rain began to fall, washing the dust from the tarps and turning the soil into mud. David met them near the equipment tent, holding a printed image of the spiral pattern. "This design," he said, "matches one found on a fragment discovered near the Temple Mount years ago. The fragment was dismissed as decorative, but if this chamber shares that pattern, then we're dealing with a connected network of sites. Possibly an entire hidden system beneath the old city." Layla rubbed her forehead. "A network built by whom? And for what?" Before David could answer, Colonel Harari returned, his expression tense. "We have orders to restrict access to the site," he said. "Only authorized personnel may enter from now on." Layla frowned. "On whose authority?" "The ministry," he said. "Too much attention, too many questions. The discovery will be managed through official channels." Amir stepped forward. "You can't just take over the work. This is scientific research." Harari looked at him coldly. "Science will get its turn. For now, security comes first." After the colonel left, the three of them stood in silence. The sound of rain pattered softly against the tarps. Layla's mind was racing. She knew what would happen next. Once the government classified the site, information would vanish behind closed doors. The discovery would be buried again, this time not by stone, but by bureaucracy. That night, Layla met David and Amir at a small cafe near the old city. The lights flickered, and outside the narrow windows the streets were wet and quiet. "We can't let them seal it," David said. "If they close the site, we may never learn what it really is." Layla stirred her tea in silence. "We'll find a way. The chamber holds more than just artifacts. It holds information. Whoever built it wanted the world to understand something. Maybe something they feared would be lost." Amir leaned forward. "What if it's a map? The coordinates you mentioned, what if they point to another chamber?" David nodded slowly. "It's possible. Ancient builders often used Jerusalem as a central point for networks of sacred geometry. If the patterns align, there could be others, beneath the Mount of Olives, the Kidron Valley, or even under the old temple foundations. Layla opened her father's notebook. The pages were filled with sketches and notes from his unfinished research on early city tunnels. She turned to one page that described an unconfirmed legend, the path of light beneath the city, where stone remembers and truth is stored. She traced the words with her finger. Her father had believed the legend was symbolic, but now she wondered if it was real. The next morning before sunrise, Layla made a decision. She and Amir would return quietly, before the security team's shift changed. They would collect final scans and samples before the ministry could shut the site completely. When they arrived, the streets were still empty. The guards at the gate were drowsy, and Amir managed to convince them that they were only finishing paperwork. Inside the trench, the air felt heavier than before. The chamber below seemed to hum faintly, a vibration too low to hear, but strong enough to feel in the bones. Layla lowered the scanner once more. As the machine descended, the readings began to change. The resonance was higher than yesterday, almost as if the chamber had awakened. On the monitor, the metallic object glowed faintly with residual energy. The spiral on the wall shimmered under the light. "Something's happening," Amir whispered. Layla stared at the screen. The readings continued to rise, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. For a moment she thought she saw movement in the reflection on the metal surface, but when she blinked it was gone. Then the scanner froze. The monitor flashed and went dark. The chamber below fell silent. Amir looked at her nervously. "What was that?" Layla's voice was steady but low. "I don't know. But whatever it isn't dead. The chamber is responding to something." They packed the equipment quickly and left before the next shift arrived. As they walked away, Layla turned once more toward the dig site. The early light of dawn touched the stones of Jerusalem, and she could not shake the feeling that something beneath those stones was watching and waiting. In her father's old notebook, she wrote a single line before closing it. "The city is alive beneath our feet, and it is beginning to speak." The city of Jerusalem moved through the next few days, unaware of what had been disturbed beneath its ancient stones. The markets were alive with merchants shouting their prices and pilgrims walking the narrow lanes with quiet prayers on their lips. But beneath all that life, something had begun to stir again after centuries of silence. Dr. Layla Mansour barely slept. Each night, she reviewed the scans they had taken before the blackout. The data was incomplete, but clear enough to show one impossible detail. The object they found was not only metallic, but composed of a rare alloy that did not exist in any known archaeological record. It reacted to magnetic fields in strange ways and emitted a faint rhythmic pulse that matched the vibration they had felt underground. Amir paced across her small apartment as he spoke. "We can't ignore this anymore. Whatever that thing is, it's not just a relic. It's alive in some sense," Layla nodded. "It's responding to something or maybe waiting for something. I compared its markings with ancient texts about the Ark of the Covenant, the temple foundations, even pre-Israelite inscriptions. Nothing fits completely, but every legend speaks about hidden vessels of knowledge guarded beneath the holy city." Amir sat down. "Do you think it's connected to those?" Layla's eyes darkened. "Maybe, but the pattern of the spiral and the way it aligns with celestial coordinates suggests something older than any religion we know. It might predate the earliest civilizations that walked this land." They were interrupted by a soft knock. When Layla opened the door, David stood there holding an envelope. His face looked grave. "The ministry officially shut down the site this morning," he said. "They've sealed it and placed guards day and night. But that's not the worst part. I intercepted a memo. They're transferring the metallic object tonight to a secure facility outside the city." Layla's heart sank. "They can't do that. It belongs in the site where it was found." David handed her the paper. "They think it's a threat. The readings we recorded scared them. They want to study it secretly before anyone else knows what it is." Amir clenched his fists. "They'll destroy it. You know what happens when politics mix with science. Layla looked from one to the other. We can't let it leave Jerusalem. If it's moved, whatever balance it has might break. And if that happens, no one knows what could follow. That night rain returned to the city. Clouds covered the moon, and thunder rolled in the distance. The streets around the old city were nearly empty. Layla, Amir, and David moved quietly through the alleys until they reached the excavation site. 2 guards stood at the entrance, sheltering under a small canopy. Layla waited until a loud crack of thunder masked their steps. They slipped behind the old stone wall that bordered the trench. Amir whispered, "The side gate is chained, but we can climb through the scaffolding. Follow me." They entered the site and descended toward the tent where the equipment had been stored. The air smelled of wet dust and iron. Inside the trench, faint traces of light glimmered below, though no lamps were on. Layla froze. The glow was coming from the chamber itself. They exchanged uneasy glances. David whispered, "It's reacting again." Layla nodded and carefully climbed down. The glow pulsed slowly, spreading across the carvings on the wall. The spiral pattern shimmered faintly as though breathing. In the center of the chamber, the metallic object no longer lay still. It vibrated gently, as if something inside was awakening. Amir's voice shook. "We shouldn't be here. This is dangerous." Layla ignored him and moved closer. The markings around the pedestal now emitted a low hum. When she approached, her flashlight flickered. Then she remembered the inscription carved on the wall, "When stone and metal meet, the truth shall rise." Her thoughts raced. Maybe the object and the plate on the wall were meant to connect physically. Perhaps that was the key her father had always searched for. "Amir, help me move it," she said firmly. He hesitated. "If this goes wrong, we have no way out." Layla met his eyes. "If we don't try now, the government will take it away, and we may never know the truth. We do this together." He nodded reluctantly and joined her. They lifted the metallic disc carefully and positioned it near the wall plate. The vibration grew stronger. David watched from behind with wide eyes. "The readings are spiking again. Be ready." Layla took a deep breath and aligned the central holes of both pieces. As soon as they touched, a faint click echoed through the chamber. Then the light burst outward. The entire room glowed with golden energy, as if the stones themselves were alive. The carvings shifted and formed new symbols, rearranging like a living language. Amir shouted over the rising hum. "What's happening?" Layla could barely speak. "It's unlocking something." The air around them thickened with warmth and a strange sense of presence. Then a beam of light projected from the center of the 2 connected pieces, forming an image in the air. It was not a solid picture, but a 3-dimensional map made of pure light. They could see outlines of the old city, layers beneath it, and tunnels leading outward in multiple directions. David gasped. "This is it. The network we suspected. It's real." Layla stepped closer to study the holographic map. One of the tunnels extended far below the Temple Mount and connected to a larger chamber deep underground. At its center glowed a single symbol identical to the one on her father's notebook. She whispered, "The path of light." He was right. As the image rotated, it revealed inscriptions in an unknown script. The letters moved like flowing water, then arranged into a recognizable form. To their shock, the script changed itself into clear ancient Aramaic, then into Arabic, then into modern English. The words floated before them. "We preserved what was before you and what will come after. When the time of division ends, the hidden truth will awaken beneath the chosen city. Guard it from those who seek power for their own hands, for it holds the memory of creation itself." Layla's hands trembled. Memory of creation? What could that mean? David whispered, "A record older than mankind. Maybe an archive left by those who came before us. Builders who understood the earth in ways we can't imagine." The light suddenly dimmed. The object released a deep pulse that shook the walls. Cracks formed around the chamber. Amir grabbed Layla's arm. "We have to go now." They climbed quickly out of the trench as stones fell behind them. The moment they reached the surface, a final burst of light shot upward from the ground. For an instant, the entire sky above Jerusalem lit up with a golden halo visible from miles away. Then it vanished, leaving only silence and the sound of rain. Sirens echoed in the distance. The guards were running toward the site. Layla and the others escaped through the scaffolding and slipped into a narrow alley before anyone saw them. They stopped only when they reached the shadows of an old archway near the city wall. David leaned against the stone, catching his breath. Everyone must have seen that. The government will lock down the entire area. Layla stared at the wet ground, lost in thought. It's awake now. Whatever it was meant to guard has been triggered. We've started something we can't undo. Amir looked at her. Then we have to finish it before they bury it again. That night, news spread across Jerusalem of a strange flash that came from the archaeological site. Official statements claimed it was an equipment malfunction, but residents described it as a light that felt alive. Rumors spread across social media, calling it a sign from heaven, while others whispered of an underground explosion. Layla spent the next day hidden in her apartment, analyzing the data recorded during the event. The energy readings defied explanation. They matched neither electrical activity nor known seismic behavior. Instead, they oscillated at frequencies that corresponded with natural Earth resonance. She whispered to herself, "It's connected to the planet itself." When David arrived later, he brought a photograph taken by a tourist at the moment of the light burst. The image showed a faint shape in the sky above the city, a circular pattern resembling the same spiral found on the wall. Layla traced it with her finger. It's not a coincidence. The pattern repeats across every layer. The chamber, the object, and the city's layout all share the same geometry. It's all one design. Amir entered moments later holding a folded paper. "I found something in the archives," he said. An old document from the Ottoman period describing a forbidden tunnel under the Mount of Olives, sealed by unknown builders. The drawing matches one of the tunnels from the light projection. Layla's eyes widened. "Then that's where the main chamber is." "The central source of it all," David nodded slowly. "If we reach it first, we might discover the truth before they erase everything." Outside the window, the evening call to prayer began once more. The city's sound felt heavier now, as if the stones themselves were aware of what had awakened beneath them. Layla looked at her two companions. "Tomorrow we go underground again. This time we follow the path of light." They all knew the risks. The government would be searching for them. But none of that mattered now. Beneath the streets of Jerusalem, something ancient and powerful had awakened, and it was calling them to uncover the rest of its secret. The storm clouds gathered once again over the city as night descended. The streets glistened with rain, and a faint tremor moved through the earth as if the ground itself was breathing. Hidden deep below the Temple Mount, the faint glow returned, spreading slowly through the forgotten tunnels as the awakening continued. The night was silent and heavy with tension as Layla, Amir, and David prepared for their descent into the tunnels beneath the Mount of Olives. The air in Jerusalem carried an unusual stillness, as if the city itself was waiting. They carried only what they needed: flashlights, small tools, and Layla's father's notebook. The coordinates they had traced from the light projection pointed toward an entrance long buried near an abandoned cistern east of the city walls. They reached the site just before dawn. The first call to prayer echoed through the valley, and a faint golden glow touched the horizon. Amir found the stone arch partly collapsed and covered with vines. Beneath the rubble, an iron gate sealed the narrow tunnel. He brushed away the dirt and whispered, "This must be it." David examined the lock. "It hasn't been opened for centuries." Layla knelt beside him, studying the marks around the gate. The spiral symbol was faintly visible, carved into the lintel above. Her heart beat faster. "We're in the right place." With effort, they pried the lock loose and pushed the gate open. The old metal groaned, and a rush of cool air came out of the darkness like the exhale of a sleeping giant. They turned on their lights and stepped inside. The tunnel sloped downward, twisting through ancient rock. The walls were lined with smooth stones that seemed too perfect to have been carved by human hands. As they moved deeper, the air grew colder, and an electric hum filled the silence. Layla stopped once and placed her hand on the wall. It felt warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Amir whispered, "It's alive like the other chamber." David replied, "These passages were built with purpose. They're conduits for energy, not just tunnels." They walked for nearly an hour before reaching a vast circular cavern. The ceiling arched high above them, and in the center stood a massive stone platform covered in geometric carvings. Around it, pillars of unknown material glowed faintly blue, as if lit from within. At the far end stood another metallic structure, larger and more complex than the one they had found before. Layla approached slowly, feeling awe and fear mixing inside her. This must be the source. The metallic structure rose nearly 10 feet high, shaped like a great disk with interlocking rings around it. Strange symbols covered its surface, some matching those on the first device, others entirely new. The rings rotated slightly, though no one touched them, making a soft, resonant sound that filled the cavern. Amir circled the structure and found a narrow pedestal nearby. At its center was a hollow, the same shape as the smaller object they had discovered earlier. "Layla, it fits here." Layla carefully removed the metallic disc from her pack. She hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of history in her hands. Then she placed it into the hollow. A low vibration spread through the floor. The rings of the larger mechanism began to turn faster, aligning with one another. The blue light from the pillars brightened until it filled the entire cavern. Dust lifted from the ground, forming swirling patterns in the air. David shouted over the hum, "It's activating the whole system!" Layla's eyes widened as symbols. Across the walls ignited with golden light, forming streams of writing that ran in every direction. The ground trembled, and the great disk began to project an image above it. It was a globe of the earth, but not as it is known today. Continents were shaped differently, and great shining points marked various locations across the world, connected by lines of light converging in one place, Jerusalem. Layla whispered, "It's a map of the ancient world before time recorded history." Amir pointed to one of the glowing lines. "Look, they link to other sacred sites, the pyramids in Egypt, the mountains of Sinai, the ancient city of Babylon, even the Andes across the sea. All connected to here." David studied the projection in silence. "This is not only a map, it's a record of an ancient network, maybe a civilization that existed before all others." They used Jerusalem as the central node. As they watched, the projection shifted again. Images appeared floating in the light, figures tall and robed, working with strange tools shaping stone, with their bare hands creating monuments of impossible precision. They were not gods or angels, but beings of knowledge. Around them, symbols spun, describing elements, forces, and patterns of creation. Layla's voice was trembling. "This is what my father searched for, a record of those who first understood the world." Suddenly, the images stopped, and a single beam of light descended from the disk onto the platform before them. From it, voice spoke not with sound but directly into their minds, clear, calm, and ageless. "You have awakened what was meant to remain hidden until the time of remembrance. We were the keepers of the first covenant, the guardians of the knowledge that shaped the earth. We built these halls to preserve truth beyond the rise and fall of nations. Those who seek power from this will only bring ruin, but those who seek understanding will find the memory of their own beginning." Layla felt her knees weaken. She whispered, "Who are you?" The voice replied, "We are what you will become when you remember who you were." Then the light dimmed, and the image began to fade. The ground trembled once more, and a section of the ceiling cracked above them. Amir shouted, "It's collapsing, we have to go." Layla hesitated, her eyes still fixed on the fading light. She pulled out her father's notebook and placed it gently on the platform. "You wanted the world to know, Father. Now it will. They ran through the tunnel as stones fell behind them. Dust filled the air, and the echo of the collapsing chamber thundered through the darkness. When they finally emerged through the iron gate, the first rays of sunrise were breaking over Jerusalem. They fell to the ground, gasping for breath. The earth gave one final rumble, and then all was still. From where they lay, they could see the dome of the rock glowing softly in the distance, the light catching on its golden surface. Amir broke the silence. "Do you think anyone will believe us?" Layla smiled faintly, though tears glistened in her eyes. "It doesn't matter. The truth is awake now. It will find its way out." David stood and looked back toward the valley. "The government will search the ruins. They might find fragments, but never the full story. Some truths can't be buried again." As they walked away from the site, Layla felt something change within her. The hum she had felt underground was still faintly present, not outside, but inside. Her chest like a heartbeat in rhythm with the city itself. She looked back one last time. The rising sun bathed Jerusalem in golden light. Birds flew across the sky, and the ancient stones seemed to shimmer for an instant as though remembering. Deep below, beneath layers of rock and time, the great mechanism settled once more into silence. Yet its energy remained flowing through the hidden network across the world, waiting for the next generation to understand its message. Layla whispered softly, "The memory of creation lives on, and one day the world will listen." And as she turned away, walking into the brightening morning, the city behind her seemed to breathe again, alive with the eternal secret that had slept for thousands of years beneath its sacred ground.